Now, so as you probably all know, Woodruff and Edwards was here in Elgin from the 1860s to the late 1980s. You probably all drove by it, rolled up your windows, hope to keep driving straight on. So, and that. Now, how many people in the audience have a personal connection to Woodruff and Edwards in one way or another? See, a pretty good crowd. Okay, we're gonna have probably a little opportunity. You have that built in, a little bit of opportunity to quiz these people. Okay, so what's that?
Quiz will follow.
Quiz will follow, yes, quiz will follow. Okay, so Tom, here's a little bio on Tom, our speaker today. Is it pronounced Barilich?
Barilich.
Barilich.
First I assume.
First silence, Barilich. Okay, very good. And so this program was put together by Tom with the help from our museum staff here. Now, Tom, according to this short little bio, is originally from South Bend, Indiana. Isn't that where they had that football stadium place there? Oh, sure, that's not Fort Wayne. Oh, South Bend, yes. Where they also made watches and cars, of course. Among other things, yes. So Tom's been in Elgin since 2010, and he grew up around foundries. His father was an operations manager at a foundry in South Bend, I presume. Okay, and he worked as a safety specialist for many years in the insurance industry. And he has been working on this presentation for many, many months and wants to talk to you about this part of Elgin's history and also how foundries in general work, especially these sand cast foundries. A little different than some of the steel casting. I grew up by the steel mills. They created they use different techniques there. So, okay, you ready to roll?
I'm ready.
All right, here you go. There.
Okay, first off, can everybody in the back hear me right now? Can everybody in the back hear me right now? Okay. All right. Test 1, 2.
Yes.
Okay, volume good back there? Okay, well, basically, the topic today is going to be Woodruff and Edwards and the foundry here. All of you here in some way or form, whether you're here with Woodruff and Edwards, because you have some connection and memories, or just Elgin history in general. And as we all know, history in this group, because you're all interested in history in some way, is basically important to us because it helps us understand how times is either similar or different from the past. No, it's just a new way of looking at things. And that's what we'll get here today. We're going to see obviously how Foundry Park is different from the days when we was business. And it's also going to be a different way of looking at some of the things, especially around Elgin. And I'll be pointing out some things to you that you probably never knew about the city of Elgin in regard to Woodruff and Edwards. And I know that is because there have been someone that previewed this, some of the museum members, they're like, I've been by that building a million times and I never noticed that. So we're going to be learning a lot here about metals, although we do have a metal specialist here, Mr. Metallurgy. But so no quiz to follow, though, I promise you that. Then afterwards, we'll be able to do a little bit of a show and tell on this here. So first off, some of you may be wondering, why is this not advancing? Okay, about me. Basically, these parts here, I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, and as some of you see here, the logos for a company called Sibley Machine and Foundry there. Basically, my father was the production superintendent. Some of you may have known a guy named Johnson at the Foundry, who was production superintendent. That's what my father would have been at Woodruff at Sibley Foundry, or he would have been my father at Woodruff and Edwards. So you have it there. Moving forward here, the foundry itself, I worked in summers from about 1974 to 79, various summers of it. At that time, it was very, very common. And I'm sure a lot of you in the room know that it was very, very common for individuals. You went to college, you finished up your semesters. During the summer, you might work in manufacturing or something for the summer, then gone back. And that's what I did. It was roughly about 220 to 250 people there, more or less that, which is a little bit smaller than Woodruff and Edwards, which was about 400 plus at its height. roughly. So, and then again, the daily total was about 10 tons or so. Generally, they shop for 100 plus. Sometimes when it was really busy, might have been 125 a day, but basically that. Myself, I was a utility guy, which meant I covered for whoever didn't show, which was very common, more common than maintenance a little bit and breakout on it. And basically, as my father was production superintendent there for it. Some of you may know Mike Bailey and the author, and his father, of course, was the maintenance supervisor over at Woodruff and Edwards. So very, very similar thing as far as story. And then refractory installation. And for those of you who don't know, refractory brick is what you put in the furnace so that basically it lines the furnace because the metal won't melt through it. So that you have it there, a special kind of brick. What? Okay. Okay, we're getting a little too much reverb here. Okay, this mic is dead. All right, this one's dead.
There you go.
Okay, how's this?
Get it, talk into it.
Really? Like this? I feel like I'm eating it. You know, well, those of you who are baby boomers or past it, maybe some Gen X's, you might remember when you saw the entertainers and singers, how they would have the microphone maybe up to here. Now it's like, it's almost like you're almost swallowing your microphone in this day and age. I don't know what we lost there, but we lost something. But anyway, this is basically my background as far as foundries and over there for it there. So obviously, when I found out that there was Woodruff and Edwards here and the history for it here and how we got to our times was very interesting to me. Moving forward on this, this was our penny sheets from the day for it there, how they came. And want to point out here, the pay sheet on the, so there we go. Now, I think you could see that there and you should be able to see, you should be able to see over here. Whoops, well, I guess I can't get the laser in it, but I do want to point out here, you'll see under here, the column second from the right that says rate for my recap of it for basically the June situation in 1979 of the summer. And basically you see here, it says 485 for it. The 560 was probably time and a half for the over hours there. Now, saying that there for the times. Okay, how's this? Let's try it. Okay. Moving forward on it, the 485 an hour, now in 2023, that equates to about $20.42 for the conversion. Now, if we look at it with factory jobs today, it's roughly what, $15 to $17 an hour generally. Yeah, high flyer at about 19 or 20. And this was a very, very average job in the foundry. I was by far not the highest paid person there. I also wasn't the lowest. The point that I'm making is that 45 today, I mean, then compared to 2042 today versus 17 to $15 an hour, it seems like while we've gotten nominal value, real wealth has gone down. So 40 hours a day back then compared to what 40 hours a day is today, even at quote more money, isn't quite the same thing. So it looks like we lost something in terms of wealth there, but gives you an idea about what's going on for that. Now, moving forward to the next one here, what we got is who were Woodruff, who was that? Well, it all starts with Cyrus Woodruff. And one of the things to keep in mind here that is a little complicated about it is that him and his son Charles, they're both CHs. So when you say CH Woodruff, it's like, which one are we talking about here? So basically, it all starts with Cyrus that you got here. If you want to say the old man, so to speak. There you got, and basically in 1864, he started the Illinois Iron and Bolt Company in Dundee over here. So he was interested in metals. For those of you who don't know, that gizmo on the right over there, that's what we call a corn sheller. You know, what does it do? Well, it shells corns. Now, how do you shell corns? Basically, that's the process by which you take a kernel of corn or a cob of corn, and you basically take the kernels off of it. And they would have made these over here. They would have cast the whole thing probably, and then they would have sent it to the manufacturer for final assembly for it there. Basically, in 1867, he runs a foundry in Clintonville, which is now known as South Elgin for it there. And then he was a Civil War veteran. And then 1879 is basically where he started it here at 31 and Mountain. But you got it there. There might be some things that'll say C.H. Woodruff Company, and I will show you some examples of that. But there's also going to be possibly you'll see Woodruff and Bishop or Woodruff and Clark for it there. So keeping that in mind there for it. Now moving forward here, that's what it looked like in 1879. Not too far after they built it. That's basically from State and Mountain Street or 31 and Mountain if you prefer. That's what it looked like there. Can you see okay? Am I blocking you? Okay, just want to make sure you got the view. So there you have it there. One of the things I think you should keep in mind on it here is you see over here on the left side, or what would be the north side of the building. And basically this is street level, and here's the windows. And basically most of the foundry was below grade on it here, or what today is the side of the banks of the river over there. So was a lot more to it than was visible. Now moving forward again, let's talk a little bit about Cyrus. Now remember, he was the guy who started this here. Charles was the son. And here you see one of the coffee mills that basically Woodruff and Edwards was very, very famous for in the late 1800s and stuff. Moving forward, at the start, there were about 25 people. Cassidy's were for schools and theater seats for it, feed mills, and we already talked about the corn shellers here. So in case you're ever quizzed on a corn sheller, you know what it is. Okay. And then basically he retired in the 1890s where his son took over. He died in 1910. So you have it there. And then his son, who's Charles. So basically Charles is the son, Cyrus is the father for it there that you have. He took over in the mid 1800s and he himself started making the coffee mills, and it's Elgin National Coffee Mill. Now, I do want to point out that Woodruff and Edwards throughout the years had various entities on it. And that's beyond a little bit beyond the scope of this talk here, because what we're going to be talking about here is primarily the foundry operations, unless there's just a brief mention, like I say, yes, Elgin National Coffee Mill. But we'll just keep it to the foundry as much as we can. And then basically at that time, by 1890, they had 65 people. And here's an example of some of the coffee mills for it. And also the Elgin Museum has it here. And also you see a wheel over here that'd be very similar to that up front. Now, moving forward, we had talked about school desks, and this here is an example of it. And then what they would have done is they would have cast this part of it, the metal part of it. They would have cast that, and then they would have sent it to the school desk manufacturer for final assembly here on it for it there. So that's one of the parts that they would have done. And that does look like there's something around the turn of the 1800 to 1900 century for it, roughly there. So that you'd have it. Another example of school desk, a little bit more contemporary, is here, a fixed desk type. I remember at the high school that I was at in South Bend, Indiana, when I first started my freshman year of 69, 70, we had it there, those very things. Then in basically the fall of 1970, I moved to mobile desks that you could move around in. But that's what you had for that kind of type. So again, they would have probably cast this bottom part. However, this one, I do not believe is Woodruff and Edwards product, but it is showing you that this is something that you would have done and been able to cast in a foundry for it there. Which is what we're about there for it. So getting that now. In 1885, when basically Charles takes over, they did a massive expansion. Okay. And basically they had 3 buildings, foundry, office, machine and warehouse over there for it there, as you see. And that's basically what looks like 31 over there that you have. And here we go. That'll give you a bigger view of it. You want to see here, you see the trolleys over here on 31, horses. You see the river over here in the background and such. Again, this is artist rendering. This is what I believe is the cupola for it, which is the heart of the foundry, you know, for it there. And again, this is artist rendering. Trust me, cupolas do not look like that. Or if they do, you got a problem, which quite frankly, we will be showing that they did have a few problems with that, unfortunately. But trust me, a cupola does not do that in the normal course of operations. So you have it there. So moving on here, basically in the late 1800s, there was a bicycle craze. Now, you take a look at it here. These here were what you call the penny farthing. The penny was a small one, farthing was a large one after the British coinage. But you look at it here, it's like a tricycle in that there's no gearing on it. So you get on and you're just pedaling. There's no brakes. You don't go backwards on it to brake. You did nothing. Anybody knows any orthopedic surgeons? This is their wildest fantasy. Okay. But anyway, in a more serious light, what this has to do with Woodruff Edwards is basically Charles H. said to himself, we can make this stuff. We can make these frames for it and stuff. It's crazy. Let's jump on it. And he did. So he had a lot of foresight with that, and he rode the wave. And then basically, eventually, a safety bicycle did it. But they did do about 200 of them throughout the years there and made quite a bit of money there. For it. Moving forward, that was a safety bike because you more or less equalized it. There are some Elgin bikes out there that you will see that even as contemporary as the 1930s that were put under Elgin Bike Company. But however, this isn't a bike talk here. And those specifics, I'll leave up to others, or you can do your research on it, or refer you to some of the bike specialists. I know that there was a talk about Elgin bike clubs here a while back in the past. So you go back to the channel or ask Trish or Liz, and they'll be able to point you to the channel for that if you have interest in that one. Now, going over to this here, this is your work floor that would have been back in the day. And a couple of things here to keep in mind. Here you have the top part, which is the cope. The bottom part is what you call the drag. They probably would have hand done this more than likely for it there, filled it up. And I'm over here. Can the camera follow me? Over here, you have an example of the glass that you have here. Of course, these will come out. I'm not going to do it. These are iron fittings here because you can see the magnet sticks to it. You might remember from your science class, or for those of you who tried to copy off my paper back in the day, that basically ferrous materials are magnetic. So there's nickel, cobalt, and iron. Aluminum is non-ferrous, so it won't stick to a magnet. So yeah, the cope is the top part, and the drag is the bottom part. So they would place these here. They would fill it with sand. They would have used a tamper, tamp it down, and they would have hand tamped it. Now back later, you would have used a printer machine that would have done this, and this one here would have been used for the corner. And then the reason why you had 3 of these instead of 2 of it might have been, say you would have a pattern or a core, and it might have been an odd size, so that it might have been bigger than 2 of them. And then you would need a 3rd one, and then you would just get a deeper gate into it for flowing and pouring up there. So that you have comment.
That's actually stacked over it. When you take the same pattern, keep elevating levels.
Yeah.
The dust you were showing, the way it manufactured until the mid-60s for export overseas. And they stacked over 10 high.
Yeah, you could do that too. Exactly. Okay, so basically that's what I want to keep in mind about this picture up here, so that you have it here. Also, you notice the wood construction over here for it. So you're dealing with high heat and you got a wood building. Sometimes not a good combination. And that came home to roost quite a bit in the past. Like over here, we have a situation where they did have a fire. And basically this is the Elgin Day Courier, May 1st, 1891. And there you have it there, that you got it. I'll try to give this a little bit there. And you can see here, I don't want to take time to read the entire article, but this here will give you an idea of what happened there. If you read that a little better. Now moving on to the next one, Elgin Daily News, and here we have it here. And then basically, talk about that one. Now, moving forward on it here, we've talked a bit about the Woodruffs. Now we're going to get to the Edwards part here. And basically 80 Edwards here, there you have it. We could not find any known pictures of Woodruffs that were valid, nor could we find any valid drawings of it. We did see some things about some people that were named Woodruff, and that did not pass out that it was for what they were. If anybody has some, knows of some provable ones, please let the museum know. Okay, well, basically, he bought a stake from a guy named Old Potter, and he basically, in 1900, he joins the company. And this is one of the things that you will be seeing shortly, is that if it says C.H. Woodruff or the Woodruff Company, it's pre-1900. If it says Woodruff and Edwards, it's post-1900 for it there. Okay, and basically, again, it is known as it from 1900 on. He marries a person named Margaret Peck, and yes, it's of the same Peck family that a lot of you here with Elgin history buffs here will know. That is the Peck family here that he has for there. And his son Al will become the vice president later after he got back from Princeton in World War II. Okay, and then he himself died in 1951. Basically, his son here, make this here. Don't really need to read the whole bio on it here, but basically his son died in 2005. Went over to Princeton, etc. That you have. Give you a moment or two to just read that. Get it there. Okay, moving forward, we talked about the Peck family, and I think as some of you know, that was one of the more prominent families in the Elgin area that you had over here. And of course, you see basically the Speece building there, and you might be able to see, I'll see if I can blow this up a bit. But right over there, this here will say Peck on the building here. If you could see that. Can we get a little bit? Nope, can't. I guess that's as big as I could probably get that. Let me try again. Yeah, this is as big as it goes. So that would have said Peck over there for it. Some of you might recognize the old Speece department store, for it there. So had it there. Maybe you never knew that, or maybe you forgot about it here. Basically, George Peck, he started a store, and then he went on his own in 1881. And then he bought the old City Hall building, which this was, and basically knocked it down, put up a 4-story building here. Okay. And then he sold it to Joseph Speece in 1920. From 1920 on, it was basically the Speece brothers. And then Julia Peck, his wife, she was interested in a lot of philanthropic things over there. And Oak Creek residence over there on the hill on 31, that was them that she started for it there. Okay. And basically they had 2 children, Richard, which was known as Dick, and Margaret, who, as you might recall, married A.D. Edwards over here for it there. And Dick was killed in a plane crash. Beth Navarra, a while back, had done a presentation on Elgin aviation where it talks about it there. And if you want to check the channel for it there on that there, if you want more information about him, you can find out there. She did a real good job of talking about him there. So right there. And then George himself dies at the age of 92 here. Moving forward, A.D. Edwards of Edwards and Woodruff and Margaret, or if you want to say the kids, so to speak, as such, basically they married in 1909, and she was on the board of trustees at Elgin Academy. In fact, there is a Margaret Peck Center in 1969 that was started at Elgin Academy next door to us here. Okay, and we already talked about Oakcrest, and also she was integral to the starting of the Elgin Y. And then basically Lake Beulah, some of you may have even attended Camp Edwards. I'm not sure of that, but basically they camp there. That's theirs there. Okay. And then basically the Pecks themselves are basically at Bluff City Cemetery. So when you do the cemetery walk, you can look for it, try to find it there. There's 4 of them there. George and Julia are there, and then their daughter Margaret, and then of course A.D. Edwards himself is buried there in that one there. So right there. Now moving forward here, this here, as we talked about. Okay. And basically, the word foundry comes from the French word foundry. Okay, that's F-O-N-D-R-E, which means to cast or to melt, and the Latin fundo, F-U-N-D-O, which basically means to cast. And so that's a combination of it. And why this is important is up here, you will see that I have here. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Not an issue. Not an issue. Okay, it's basically, it says iron founders and machinists. And that's the thing you're pouring, the foundry operations founding for it there that you have. Another part I'd like to show you. Now, this one here is basically just showing, as you see, April 25th, 1907, that this letter is from. And basically we got, it's talking about his latest catalog that came out. And there's his signature at the bottom. genuine provable, piece of work from E.D. Edwards. Now, coming on here. Here's some samples here. That you have. The one on the right, thank you to Dan Miller for it. It's from his house and that he has here in the area. That's a chimney clean out. However, it says Woodruff and Edwards, and his house was built in 1875. So this must have been some kind of replacement or new one put in, because it wouldn't have been Woodruff and Edwards prior to 1900, even though his house may go back to 1875. Now, one of the things you probably never saw or paid attention to is on the right here, that's the Randstad building. And a lot of you may know it as Al's Cafe and Ice Cream Shop, Al's Cafe and Deli, or that there. So what you got here is you look at the main entrance by the tent over here, and on the floor is Woodruff and Edwards product, or actually Woodruff product, which might be going back to the start of the building. And over here at the north entrance, you might not be able to see it, but that says the C.H. Woodruff Company, Elgin, Illinois. And that's on the floor of it when you go into that north entrance. So those of you that might be going over to Al's Cafe, take a look at that entrance sometime. I know I've gone there with some friends, and she basically just goes, "Oh my gosh, here it goes again." So, you know, some people can appreciate history, some people can't. But moving forward, here you see it a little bit better here. But you see, that's the word "the." That's a CH or C.H. That's worn away. And then Woodruff Company. So obviously it does say Woodruff and Edwards pre-1900. I don't know if anybody's ever paid attention to that, but those of you who have gone over to Al's or are about to go over to Al's next time, I guarantee you probably look down at that and say, darn, he's right. Okay, so moving forward here, we did talk about, hey, if there's a cupola looks like it did in that artist edition, we got a problem. Well, in 1915, they had a problem. So this is a fatality over here that you had, and just wanted to bring a little bit here. One killed, and we had the person killed. What I think is kind of interesting is that article to the right, where it says mayor says he'll clean up Aurora. Under the things about how things change, stay the same, change, they stay the same department here. I think that you could probably take that same article, insert the names of the current city council, police chiefs and mayors, and you probably have tomorrow's copy for the Daily Herald. I'm not so sure anybody knows the difference. But moving forward though, this is the same article, same thing, except this is the Elgin Daily Courier about the individual who got killed over there. The other thing is you'll notice that this is December of 1915, and World War I was in effect in Europe. And you see some of the commentary there too, just to give you a historical bent on it here. And then we talked about fires, and then in 1917, basically we had a fire here for it there. Some people said that due to the war that there might have been some German sympathizers, nothing provable. Not going to engage in speculation here for it. Okay, so that we have it. Normal operations took them till 1920 to rebuild. The $100,000 in 2023 is 2.3 million. They have for it there, so quite a bit. Fortunately, they probably had business interruption insurance. And this is this one part of the Foundry. I'd like you to keep in mind this portion of it right here. Take a hard look at that one as we're going. This is roughly Ball State today, from where this is. And keep in mind this one as we go to the next slide. And then here, that's that part that we talked about there for it there as you're going for the view. And then this is the side to side for it that you have. And then here's you know, some of the total that's out of it here. Yeah. Now we're going to go over here talking about the Foundry. Okay, and basically the metal casting itself over here. Here's the types of steel that you might remember: alloy, carbon, and iron; pewter, alloy, and tin. You know, tin and basically copper; brass, copper, and zinc; bronze, it's kind of copper and tin. The gray iron is kind of the types that you have. It's the most common and rare form. Basically, white iron is very, very sophisticated, but it has basically a graphiting agent, usually called cementite, although I've heard them called other things too within the industry. But you have there, and the ductile iron, that's the, if you want to call it glamour iron, or that's the big boy there, so to speak. Basically, you add magnesium type products or manganese to it, it gives us more strength. And then you have your melt temperatures here, 1200 degrees, 2000 degrees, 2100 degrees, right around there. That's why you use things like this refractory block over here for it there, because against the metal of it, it'll go over there. Now, the types of foundries, basically you got iron foundries and then you have non-ferrous ones, which do there. And in some cases, you could do both metals in it, just don't do it in the same furnace, or else you've got a real problem. Now, captive foundry is one that belongs to a bigger company. Good example of this would have been General Motors. They would have the central foundry division, in which anything that's cast over there goes to GM products. Job foundries such as Woodruff and Edwards and Sibley's was a situation where anybody basically walks in the door with a pattern. We'll make it for you. How many you want? And when, which is almost more important for it there. So basically, the process over there, pattern making, mold making, core making, material handling, charging, founding, and finishing. Now, we did talk a little bit about the mold making here for it there. So we have it here where we talked about sand in the flask. And then basically you have basically your green sand there, which is high silica content. And then the olivine sand, which is silica free for it there, but it's very, very expensive. When you decommission or demolish a foundry, usually you always see some residual silica in it there as far as cleanup and environmental impacts for it there. Okay, and we already talked about cope and drag there, and we have an example over here. And that one in the bottom right picture are the same flasks that you see up here. Okay, core making, basically it's real simple. This provides an internal cavity for it. So basically you'll go around it and then you pour it. And do that there. So you'll have a void in there so that you'll have it like you would put a core in the middle of this here so that you can get this over here for it. Like that. And then basically you basically live on what your scrap percentage is over here. That's one of the things that just about every foundry meeting. What's our scrap count today? What's our scrap count today? What's our scrap count today? There you have it there. And of course, iron, you can move by magnet over there. Sands are moved by conveyors. And we're going to be getting into furnaces in a bit. Now, the charging, the cupola here, basically, doesn't everybody have a green cupola in their basement? And actually, that one will work. If you had an air source and a torch, you could actually fire that one up. But basically, you have it here for it there. And you got your burners over here for it. And, your air coming in here. Your material will go over here. Your slag or waste products will come out here. And this iron tap is what you'll put in. And that'll generally go to a furnace for holding for it. And then from the furnace, they'll put it in ladles, and ladles will pour for it there. Okay, furnace types, arc and induction furnaces. Your arc furnace over there is where your higher heats are for it there. Your induction one will do things like aluminum, things like that, smaller capacities for it there. Okay, I'm not going to give you too much of a quiz on that one. And then founding, again, remember, founding is the act of making this, casting it there. Okay, and got it there. Now, at the bottom left, over here is what you call the manual shakeout. So once you pour it here, you have to take it out. And that is probably the hardest job in the foundry if it's manual shakeout, for it there. But there aren't too many easy jobs in the foundry, let me tell you. And if you don't think so, even though these are small flasks here, try carrying those up 2 flights of stairs from the parking lot. Okay, so you got it there. And as you see on the bottom right, that's more of a manual automatic shakeout for it there that you have. And then there was a comment I had heard in preparation for this where they said, we got pictures of people soldering at the foundry where actually they were casting or pouring. And so it's a difference there that you put in. And solder is basically doing a filler, whether you're soldering a pipe for it there, or you're soldering wires together, you're putting a filler in there. And you see where the arrow is, there's the soldering gun. And we have a situation here, where as you can see the individual there on the left, if he looks familiar, that's Alan Napier, who played an iconic role of Alfred the Butler in the '66 Batman series. On a more serious note, although I am very serious about it, Some of you may remember Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England during World War II. Prior to him was a Prime Minister named Neville Chamberlain, who was known for the appeasement thing and got pretty much called pretty much a wuss throughout history because of that. Basically, on his mother's side, Ellen Napier was the first cousin of Neville Chamberlain over there for it. And he felt that his cousin got kind of screwed by the history books because he was like, hey, Hitler was the one who flaked, not me. You know, why don't they hold him accountable? And so instead he came out as weak, but that's another matter. But the point is an important distinction that we have here for it. So I want to make sure that you knew these definitions here. Finally, the finishing here. And as you can see, once you pour it into a hole here and it goes and you have the part, well, basically you break the part off of it. And these go here to basically be remelt. Sometimes half of this can be excess, and that's not scrap. There's a difference between that and scrap. Scrap would be a non-conforming part that you would have, or basically they poured it and they stopped while they were doing it, and all of a sudden you had a void. I mean, once you do a pour and you start your pour and you tip your ladle and it's going into that gate or the hole, so to speak, you do not stop for anything. You know, you dump the ladle maybe, but you don't just stop and go and pour it again. You know, that's a metallurgist's worst nightmare. Say nothing about a production superintendent or a foreman's worst nightmare. Okay. The other part, we talked about summer and everything for it. Goodbye Elgin High by Mike Bailey. He talks about the foundry and his experiences there. I'm like, my gosh, this will take me back to the 70s almost. Was incredible. I do recommend it for. And also, just for the record, where that dot is, that's Mike Bailey. Back in the day, that's high school graduation. So there are probably a couple of copies of this book available here at the library, but I do recommend it very, very well for it there. You know, wish I would have wrote it. Okay, so now we move on. This is the post rebuild that you have. And so over here, you got basically Mountain Street over here at the bottom, then Washington, Ball, and Mill Street. And then, of course, here is Kimball Lawrence at the top for it there that it looked like over there. Okay, and that's pretty much until shutdown is the overall configuration. I mean, there might have been a department that moved here, moved there, or something like that, but for the most part, that's what it looked like. Pretty much covered, you know, everything from Highland up to Kimball Lawrence, you know, pretty much in some way, shape, or form. Now, moving forward here, we still have the same thing, you know, Mountain, Washington, Ball, you know, Hill Street, but we also have what were the parts of the foundry here. So starting at the top on the corner, that was not the offices, that was the core room. And the tall one was basically the baking ovens. Then you have the slinger. Now what the slinger does is you would have castings that, yeah, would be the size of the table or even bigger that you would have. And you would put in the mold. And basically this machine here would basically put the sand out. And you're basically slinging the sand. It was called sling. You know, so you have it there. Yeah. Yeah, the Hunter machine, basically, instead of doing the hand tapping of it here, it did it pretty much on its own. You put it underneath, sand would come down, you kind of scrape it out, turn it to the other side, and away you go. So that was the Hunter area. Wheel brader is basically a shot blast area. Is you take the castings, you have the sand, got to clean it off there. So basically, you would shot blast it with the wheel brader. So that's what was done in that area. And then over here was a small casting area. There's the big casting area and caster and storage. Your pattern shop, time study people. I don't know if that's where you worked. Okay. Yeah. And this building here was actually the office. A lot of people think it was on 31 Kimball. It was over here. And then basically shipping was over here for it there. So that's pretty much the configuration. Yeah, they might have moved a department here, put some casting somewhere else throughout the years, but that overall is the basic process and the basic lineup of the thing throughout the years until shutdown. And here's a view looking north. You see the office over here, time study area. You see the cupola over here, you know, for it over there that you got. And now see another view of it, which is interesting that you had basically a silo here that you don't see in the other ones.
That was for used sand storage.
I was thinking it was sand storage. Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what year they got rid of the silo?
It states it.
Because a lot of these pictures don't show.
Within the last 5 years.
Okay, because I see some pictures there. There's the cupola right over there. And of course, your core area over there going forward. Okay, now moving forward, this is what it looks like today. And then here's your side to side. Okay, the office area that we talked about. And then over here, you see where I wrote in street level, so all that there was below grade. And there was Mike Bailey, the author that we had talked about there, and he's over there with Ray Johnson, who basically was to Woodruff and Edwards what my father was to Sibley Foundry, John Barilich, for it there. There you got it. So, the point is that most of this was below grade. And the next, right, right. And then here's when they demoed it. You can see most of the foundry was below. This is during the demo. Here's basically some rail area that you have, some overhead for it there, etc. That you got. One of the things, and then here's the core room area that was basically 31, in Kimbo, 31 in Lawrence, take your pick. And that there was baking ovens over there, which is a little bit different than from heat treat. Okay, heat treat is basically dealing with the metal properties. You'd have annealing, you'd have normalizing, and then you would have basically hardening of it depending upon. It's not the same as baking. So I want to make sure that you know that distinction there. Now we're moving on to World War II, and basically they had this contract here, and what was a 12 per day one, they had an order for 300, and basically instead of 12 per day, they did 100 per day, and they received this prestigious E award here for it. Forward over here. And one of the things to bring up here is you will see here a very, very diverse group of people here, and also very, very diverse levels here. Individual in the suit, individuals over here, individual over here from the Puerto Rico thing that you had it here. So, and basically a lot of this was how some of the Puerto Rican community in the Elgin area got started working at the foundry from Aguadilla that you had it here, which is in northwestern Puerto Rico. And
female employment 25%.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's Aguadilla over here, which for those of you who know your Spanish, which I know all of about 25 words, used to know 12, but thanks to a friend of mine, it's double. Basically it stands, agua is water, and it stands for waterfront. So that's where it's at, in case you wonder. Now, 1940s, there were some acquisitions that happened here. Wade Manufacturing was a plumbing supply company. A lot of this was due to World War II contracts that they were able to expand out here. Elgin Windmill Company, I was surprised. They weren't as profitable a company as I thought they were. They did not do very good. And that they had here, as you can see. And basically, Woodruff and Edwards acquired it in 43 during the war. And they finally pulled the plug in 48 and threw in the towel, so to speak. But we do have a nice windmill there. Now, over here on the corner, as you can see, this is what it looked like. This is believed to be 1946 for it there that you have for it. And like to keep in mind right over here, this little hut over here by the railroad crossing, that was a situation where you had a track tender. He'd received a signal from the engineer of the locomotive and he put down the gate. By the 1950s, that was gone for it there. Here's a little bit closer look. Couldn't identify the cars there. Put it on social media and I got just about everything except a Studebaker. And somebody even wrote in like, people, are you, pulling numbers out of a hat here? So basically you have that. Now, it did use hydropower to some extent over there. Basically, as we all know, electricity from water, basically it turns a turbine. That turbine is generated, that basically generates electricity there for it. Was underneath it. A lot of people felt the area was creepy. And given that most of the foundry was below grade, I see what they were having. That was not the reality of Sibley Foundry when I was there. And then over here, on the next one, the raceway area would have been here. And as you can see here, you have a real cute woman looking over there who's possibly saying something like to herself, that might have been where the hydropower of Woodruff and Edwards were. Then again, she might not be, which is probably the greater likelihood. Inside joke, but we could explain that later. But anyway, there it is, side to side. Now, moving forward, we weren't going to spend a lot of time on other entities, but there was a machine shop on North State Street over there, like in the late 50s, that was there. And presently, if you ever go by it across from basically the Habitat for Humanity and flea market area on 31 North, there's a place called Petro Choice, and that's the same building today. And I'm going to give you a side-by-side over there. That's Petro Choice, if you know it. And again, like I said at the start, you'll probably know some areas here that you never thought of before. You know, so you already got L's and you already got Petrotroids, that you never knew had the connection to it. Like I said, history, it's a living thing, it's a growing thing, it's an evolving thing. And then basically 1961 here, basically again, A.D. Edwards pretty much owned the company from 1913 on as he bought it out. And then basically in 61, family shares were bought up and Oral, is it Graining? Yeah, Oral Graining took over. He's a classic case, almost like my father, who was production superintendent at Sibley Foundry, where he worked himself from the floor and, you know, the lowest jobs to the top there. Well, my father was production superintendent, but there was the owner of the foundry and executive crew above him, but he was as far as you could go in the foundry without being part of a certain family here. And basically, a GM and all his Chalmers, most of them were their biggest customers that you had. Okay, now basically Woodruff and Edwards didn't quite people didn't quite think highly of them in a lot of levels either, you know, for it there that you have. And you see here's some of their attempts at things like emissions, things like that. In the 1960s, there was a lot of things going on in the country as far as pollution control, you know, water pollution, air pollution, land pollution. And this is one of the things they put on there. But also as far as today, even, you might remember when they had those wildfires. Now, I was in the UK this June when a lot of that happened. But right before I did that, in late June, I saw this, which was basically on the What's Happening in Elgin Facebook website. So this is from June, somewhere between the 15th and the 20th of June, 2023, if you want to look it up on Facebook. This individual wrote that in and said, I swear I could have smelled your foundry. So even now in 2023, there's people saying that. And then basically here you have it that they're starting their pollution device. You know, you see the date of that, you know, in 1969 there, put it on. And I'll focus a little bit on the picture here for it so you can get an idea of, you know, the construction that went on there. Right there. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then the APC over here, air pollution control. Basically what it does is that you have an afterburner. I'll show the picture of it here. This is your afterburner. This is your cupola. And the afterburner basically reburns the particulates that come in here. It comes down as basically an ash or type material. It goes into these bags here, which are taken away. And as you see here, the cupola is the one with the cap on the top here that I'm doing. And there's your afterburner. And here you go again, yeah, with the afterburner. They're going down there to the cupola. Going on here, air quality, and they had various waivers of it and various complaints to the Illinois one here. Also across the street from it at the time was Gilbourne Library that was getting a lot of particulates there. Gilbourne people were something other than amused. We put it that way there. And so as you see here, here's some of the requirements for it there that you have. Operationally, they're, though, in spite of all the costs of pollution and things like that, that did put some foundries out of business. 74, 75 was their best year revenue wise, where they had 10,400,000 employees here. And basically GM and Alice Chalmers were the big ones here. There was a movie called Four Films. I was trying to find it on YouTube. I could not find anything of it. Four Friends?
Yeah, it was about,
Okay.
it was about three guys that were in love with this girl. And it was out east, like in Pennsylvania or someplace, but they needed the Woodruff Edwards foundry because it was the last sand casting foundry in London.
Well,
We
we're
saw
going to talk about that last part later, but okay, that's probably why I couldn't, because the information that I had said Four Films. So that's probably why I couldn't find it if it's named Four Friends.
Supposing it's supposed to be a steel foundry,
Right.
well, steel mill, I think, in Indiana.
We're going to be getting to that part about that being the last job shop foundry in the country. Okay, I've got some comments on that. Let's hold that thought here. Okay, so basically here, you know, you did have two bodies that were due to something else there that wasn't there, and you had some raids that went on. I will tell you that one, there's the Hunter machine in the background. I could tell you at Sibley's with the union they had there, that would have lasted all of 5 seconds because they would say, hey, you got these people coming in here. We got people sitting on the bench over here in the union hall. So that would not happen. And basically, you know, the end came, really didn't have any choice, quite frankly. You know, they were down to maybe 3 days a week, 2-3 days a week. Was it his fault? It wasn't fault, it's just the way that goes for it there. What I do want to talk about, the last one there, simply no. Might have been in the Metro Chicago area, but basically there was Sibley Foundry in South Bend that lasted until '05. There's Brigham Casting and Iron, which is still around, Neenah Foundry over there, Fairfield Aluminum and Fairfield Foundry in Fairfield, Iowa. I mean, there's a ton of them. There was a Sheffield Foundry in the city, which may close about the same time. It certainly wasn't in the country unless you're calling the country King County. And on that there, I could prove provenance on that. And I'm sure our American Foundry Society person can also do that for a little research. Demolition here that you have, as you can see, where they're going over that. And then basically no bodies were found, contrary to popular opinion. Vandenberg Foods had it, and then they closed in 2010 that you had. But I mean, basically there wasn't a whole lot of use for the vacant building there, and equipment was already sold out. So you had environmental wise, this was on the national priorities list. That was taken off, and I'll go to the next one. Basically what they did is the control was encapsulate, and there's 60+ inches of it there between that and the bad stuff for it. And now it's got MFRAP status, which no further remediation action required. But if somebody would ever buy it out and try to do something commercial for it, you'd have to have all that pretty much burned and cleared out for it. And then special thanks today, no particular order, Al Walters, Liz Martson, Dave Sigenthaler, Mike Bailey, Trish LaFleur, Bess Navarra, and Wanda Kitzmiller that we had. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. And then I realized fully that some people may take it from there. This is a partial one here. And then basically want to go on to question time or comments. So take it away.
There used to be some kind of foundry on Union on the west side. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. Again, I'm not from Elgin Ridge. I know that there was a Woodstock foundry. I know there was a foundry in Skokie. I know Sheffield Foundry in Chicago closed down in the early '80s.
This one is pretty small. They just put a loop.
Possible there.
Valuable, same job.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
A note with the coffee mill, and you had shown the color, little catalog. William Wrigley of gum would provide you, if you were a shop owner and you would sell his gum, he would provide you an Elgin coffee mill free of charge. They're all over the United States because of that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you caught it on that slide or not, but it did say Wrigley's distributor on the top. You know, which is, yeah.
Yeah, I was friends with Ray Johnson's daughters.
Okay.
They lived on East Chicago Street in a 4-square house by Elgin High School.
Okay.
And I grew up in Barrington. I used to come to Elgin and scoop the loop. And I became friends with the two daughters. And the first of our friends got married was Renee. That was the first wedding I went to.
Okay.
So, but and then the movie, The Four Friends, they did some houses up on Fall Street. They did the movie. And her and I and two buddies of mine bought a house that was in the movie. It was a drug house. And we called it the rehab of The Four Friends. We watched them tear down the foundry when I was rehabbing that house back in '88.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, pretty much we're at the end of our time here for it there, that you have it here. I do want to say in conclusion here, you know, all of you here have a good history background. Some of you here actually worked at Woodruff and Edwards directly. Some of you have good foundry knowledge, et cetera. I just want to say that it's been an honor to share my expertise and experience with you. It's been an honor, and go forth and do good. Thank you.